schools. First on our agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. Anthony.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is going to be our moment of silence for Covenant School. We also have a family at Holloway that needs to be lifted up in prayers. We also have a family at Rockville that is connected to the Covenant School. So if you'll please bow your heads. Thank you. First of all, I want to say welcome back, everybody. Everybody was across, I don't know how many time zones. I'm glad to see everybody back here safe and sound. Thank you so much. So first is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions? Dr. Sullivan, welcome back.
Yeah, only thing I will call it, as you'll see, the vestibule and chair lift for Holloway High School on here as well.
Yay. I know that's been a long time coming. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for following that through to fruition. No visitors tonight, and recognition will be Thursday night.
Yep. So we'll spotlight.
So number 9. Could we have Mr. Reed read
Absolutely.
the resolution? Mr.
Yep.
Reed, would you mind reading that resolution for us, please?
Not going to hurt my feelings for that, to have someone else read a
He
resolution.
does so well. Thank you, Mr. Reed, for putting this together in short
Sure.
notice for us. I really appreciate it.
So this is, as you know, the county commission has been dealing with issues with the adequate facilities tax and talking about increasing that to bring in additional revenue, which the county can use for new schools and other issues. Obviously, growth in the county is a cause for a lot of the increases that we have to have for schools. And rather than having the taxpayers bear 100% of that burden, the adequate facilities tax allows the people who are buying new homes to pay a portion of those costs that will otherwise be imposed on everyone in the county as a whole. So this is a resolution supporting the county commission's adequate facilities fee and impact fees tax. It is whereas the Rutherford County Board of Education is charged with governing the school district so that all students receive the best educational opportunities in order to graduate, prepare to enter a post-secondary institution or the workforce. And whereas Rutherford County, Tennessee has been one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Tennessee for the past 10 years. And whereas growth is expected to continue. And whereas this growth is anticipated to stimulate an increase in the future enrollment of students within the Rutherford County school system. And whereas the county's present revenue raising authority is limited to and relies heavily on property taxes, which impose the cost of new growth on existing residents rather than on new residents and businesses, which create the demand for the additional expenditures. And whereas Rutherford County is committed to both present and future county residents to maintaining a level of public facilities and services commensurate with those presently provided. And whereas the county's present population, employment base, tax base, and budget cannot alone support the additional revenues needed to supply facilities to serve new growth without a substantial increase in the property tax on existing development. And whereas due to continued growth, it is necessary and appropriate that Rutherford County be given authorization to extend its taxing authority to enable the county to impose a fair and reasonable share of the cost of public facilities on the new development, which is the cause of the additional cost. And whereas the surrounding counties in Middle Tennessee have enacted higher impact fees with limited to no impact on the continued growth in those counties, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Rutherford County Board of Education supports the efforts of Rutherford County to update the adequate facilities impact fees on new homes in Rutherford County. So that's a resolution that you'll be considering on Thursday night.
Thank you. So a little background information on that. Our enrollment study suggested that we were going to have between now and 2026, 7,000 more students. And Dr. Sullivan, if you want to talk about the state and their numbers and how they are pretty close.
Yeah, so the state gave us a projection based on their new TISA funding formula of what we were looking at, and they have us projected well over 55,000 for the first 4 years of TISA, which is all that they're giving us projections, which would fall right in line with what the salary or what the zoning group is looking at. 5,000 within 4, they're looking close to 7,000 for 5.
So we've got a lot of them coming. Any comments or questions?
I would like to add that, assuming that this passed Thursday night, that we make sure that we send a copy of this out to all the members of our delegation, Speaker Sexton, Chairman Crawford, and Subcommittee Chairman Dale Carr. I think it's going to be critical we get this covered across the whole delegation.
That's a great idea. I totally agree. Do we know how much money this is going to potentially bring in? It's not going to, I mean, first of all, I want to say I do support this. It's something I talked about before I was campaigning and talked to several folks on the delegation while they were running, and also to the mayor and some county commissioners. But I'm just really curious. How much money do we think is it projected this is going to generate? What is the revenue?
We don't know,
Do you
because
even
that would
have
be
the
up,
slightest idea?
that'd be up to the county commission and their finance department.
Are they able to make projections right now?
Not,
Based on, it will be based
Yeah.
on growth. So anything
not that
that
I'm aware
they
of.
said would be just an estimate.
It'd be interesting to see what that projections are going to be. The money's not going to come in right away, and so we still need some kind of a revenue generator that will bring money right now. I'm glad that we're doing this. It's a good step in the right direction, but I still feel that we need another way of looking at how to grow revenue.
I am in support. Obviously, we need the money, so I'm in support as well. Do we know if there is any parameters on it?
Yeah, so that is up to the county commission of what they are setting. I believe what they looked at was $5,000. Is how they looked.
As 5,000 as a max?
Yes. And
Correct.
if you go back and watch the Thursday night special call meeting, he talks about those and how we will be in line with all the other counties that are around us, and that it did not slow growth.
And how Wilson, I think, is looking to raise theirs. So we're looking to potentially match what theirs is right now, but they're going to raise theirs. But compared to what we're getting in revenue right now, anything's a positive step.
I also put a call in while we were in Tampa last week to Speaker Sexton, and hopefully I'll hear something back from him. Anything else? Number 10.
All right, number 10, so this is just connecting back. We are about to look at section 4 of our policies, and we have a policy review committee. When's our policy committee, Monica? Remember the date? So April 24th is our next policy meeting, and so we are going to just look for the board to review these first half. So instruction is the main portion of what we do as a district. So it is a large section. A lot of these were just updated in July, so anything, of course, board members is free to be brought on. These are just the ones that have not been updated since July. So there are a lot of parts of instruction, for example, not a lot, several that aren't on here. So like instructional standards 4.101 is not on here. We just updated that one. Let me pull up the date real quick. I believe it was July 27th, 2022, and all that did was go through and update language for making sure instructional materials, textbooks, or supplemental materials created cannot be aligned to Common Core, and then talked about the prohibited concepts. So we just reviewed those and updated them in July to match state law. If there's one of those in instruction, of course, you want to pull out and look at, we absolutely can do that. There's a couple that I wanted to call out. One was 4.100, so that's instructional goals. If there are any new goals that we need to look at. So this has not been updated since 2009. It is pretty generic because our individual goals are going to change based on whatever the accountability, and we have that in our strategic plan. But if there's something specifically in policy, it will go there. The only other ones, if you're looking at a couple of them, 4.2001, curricular activities. That one deals with band, visual performing arts coming into the school day, having private lessons into the school day. Special education and summer school are probably ones we're going to want to rewrite, 4.202 and 4.204. They're pretty old, and summer school needs to be updated to include language around summer programs that we offer. And then the only other one that I wanted to look at that I thought needed to be particularly was virtual education program 4.212, Monica. We updated that in July, but that's one we need to look at right now. It says just for educational aspects. We've talked some about being able to put in, even though we're doing it, but putting it in policy for disciplinary measures at the alternative school. So just putting that formally in policy. If there's any that you want to look at, we are just going through 4.405 this time. We will go through 4.406 and further at the April 20th meeting.
But by far and large, most some of those kids will go 4 years of school and never go on a field trip, never go see an art museum, never go see a play, never go see anything. And that's one thing that just breaks my heart.
In one of the Title I meetings, I can't remember who was there with me, they were talking about a field trip that they had taken recently. It will come to me, and I'll let you know, because I told them, I said, please call Miss Claire Maxwell and tell her that y'all have been on a field trip. Because we don't hear about, true enough, we don't hear about it.
Yep. They do go. What we struggle with the most, we absolutely allow and permit field trips. Our schools are so big, most places won't take our schools because we may have to fit 6 or 7 different days for us to fit. If we take an elementary school that has 12 or 13 classes, if first grade, they can fit an entire school system in to where we can't fit one of our schools in. And so that is an issue, and that's not necessarily with us.
I do think they go and do things. It's the higher grades, high school. You can go to high school for 4 years and never go anywhere. And that's one thing I would like to see, because they deserve, those are very educational and cultural trips for some of these kids, and they need to see art, they need to see music, they need to see, we have a battlefield here. Some of them never even been to it. It's right here. Mm-hmm. And it's... Mm-hmm.
Is it a funding issue?
No, we can provide funds for it, and most of the time it gets funded by the schools. That's very rarely a barrier. More times than not, it is logistics. Yeah.
And I'm sure anybody on this board, or Dr. Sullivan, would volunteer to be a chaperone. I've been to Dollywood many times with the band from Stewart's Creek. So we swilled Mountain Dew on the way up and on the way back. So I'm sure we'd be happy to do that again.
Well, you can ask Ms. Maxwell at our scope delegation. I had one student with me, and it was like they all had a certain spot. It's just the teacher mo goes back in the field trip, and I had one student who told the other students that they were going back home with their mom, but did not tell me. So I had a minor worry that I lost a child, minor meltdown that I lost a child. Yeah.
At MTSU. Number 11.
All right, number 11, the ESL Department, tab 2. ESL Department requests the approval to purchase licenses for the 23-24 school year for the following companies with Title III funds. Purchase of Learning Series A to Z licenses. The ESL Department is seeking approval to purchase licenses from Learning A to Z for our English language learners. These programs are designed to facilitate both language and literacy at all levels of proficiency. The total cost is $23,104 and will be paid for with Title III funds.
Any comments or questions? Number 2.
All right, number 2, the ESL Department seeking approval to purchase 3,850 student licenses from Seesaw. Seesaw provides students with an interactive online learning platform to practice foundational math and literacy skills with text and audio feedback features. Seesaw features portfolio-based assessments and progress monitoring and reporting. The total approximate cost is $28,000 and will be paid with Title III funds.
And this is not all of our ESL students.
No, that is not.
The ones that are, the ones that need it, that test.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? Guess we'll go to the financial report.
All right, we got several things in the financial report. So first, if you guys will, you have a copy of the April financial report, and we look at this every month. So first thing, we're looking at the stapled copy that says 141 General Purpose School Fund. Couple things I want to call to your attention. Current property tax. So we estimated 84 million. We have currently brought in 86 million, so we brought in more. That is the largest majority of our property tax for the year because that's usually paid towards the end or beginning of the year. So I don't anticipate that going up a ton, but it will still go up some, and you'll see we're percent over. Other parts you will see that are big ones that we're over. One, I don't know what's happened with everybody getting married all of a sudden, but we're 2,696% over what we budgeted. Yeah. Yeah, that was, I mean, that one's we probably missed something there. Yeah, not too many of them. The other ones that you will look, if you look at local option sales tax, you'll see we estimated 93.2 million, actual 67 million. That's a month behind, correct, with sales tax. So you're looking at what was really reported through February. That's the way sales tax runs. It runs 1 month behind. So we should be tracking above what we were anticipating as well. But if you will notice, we estimated 7.76 million and we only brought in 7.70. So it was below our estimate, and that's the first time that I can recall that happening, and at least this school year. So we are starting to see that trend of sales tax not meeting projections. The other one you will see is BEP. So BEP, we estimated 267 million. So far, we brought on 212 million. We are above what our estimates are, but what month do we not receive a payment? Is it May, June? June.
May.
May. So we do not receive a payment in June, even though we still have, or in May, we still have payroll that goes out that month. And so it is good that that is still above, and that kind of incorporates some of our growth money. All that to say, you will see if you flip over to the second page, the revenue that shows the numbers we've looked at all the time, but we've already received 81% of our funds that we expected. So we're doing well there. And if you go down through expenditures, you will see that we've brought in 381. We've only spent 325. And so we're doing well. But again, I want to recall that we have a huge payroll. Brian, what's our monthly payroll by chance? Any idea? I can give you an idea. I can look to see what large. I can look to see just an average of what monthly payroll is, because that will be a huge chunk of that, of where it looks like we're so far under when we don't get a BEP payment. That brings that number very much more in line when we get to that May month to pay payroll again. So
That will happen in May only?
yeah, May's the only month we don't receive one from that. You will see that I don't anticipate us ending up 28 million in the hole. We're still going to end up in the negative like we budgeted, but I don't anticipate us getting that full 28 million in the hole.
Some of the savings is because we have so many vacancies.
Open positions, correct, yes. We always budget conservatively, but then we also make sure that, these are vacancies. Part of that is we would have a larger amount of funding, but we have spent over 4 million this year in funding extra bonuses at our hardest staff schools.
Can I ask, we did really well in this, considering we budgeted 5,000 for sale of equipment, and we brought in 101. What did we sell? And what else can we sell?
Have a yard
That's a
sale.
very
Yeah.
good return.
Yeah, I'll have to go back
We
and look.
surplus twice a year, and it's various equipment. We sell desks, chairs,
Oh.
computers, TVs.
So it's not just equipment, it's
No, ma'am. We surplus twice a year.
Goes on
I
gov
sell,
deals.
this year, we'll probably sell a number of trucks. They're not going to be, I'm not sure that hauling them to the scrapyard may not cost us more than what they're worth. We've got, it's a lot of things.
And we do put small amounts in that because we just don't know what it's going to be.
That's a good return.
Yeah, so that was just an overview of our revenue and expenditures.
So you're saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're saying in May, the number on the actual column is actually gonna, on the second When you look at the actual, you're saying in the month of May, that number's gonna come more in line with what's on the budget estimate?
Yeah, because we won't receive a so far we've received 81% of our budget, but only spent 65%. You are not going to see a huge jump in revenues in May because we're not going to get a BEP payment, but we're still going to have a huge payroll. So those percentages are going to line up closer.
That's, wow.
Yep. Yep. So that gets us to the next thing I wanted to hit on, talking about financial kind of summary reports. I'm going back to all my notes to make sure I hit all of them. The next thing I wanted you to look at was, we've looked at this TISA at our budget retreat several times. So here's the March 31st, 2023. It should be stapled as well. And so this is just a letter I get every time. This is our our TISA estimate. Our TISA estimate is $7 million less this month than it was last month. And so wanted to tell you why. So one of the biggest issues that our attendance department, our attendance departments across the state have talked about is that TISA is supposed to report once a month, and that's why we're getting a report once a month, which in theory may seem like a great idea to know truly what you're going to be every month. We are such a big district that we are constantly making updates. We sent an update on March 15th. That update involved one of our middle schools and sending new data to the State Department, and so the state recognized that as us cutting 700 students from one of our middle schools. It's corrected now. The state actually called me Friday night and said, you're going to notice your TISA estimate at $7 million less than what you got last month. You're not actually going to get that little, but I can't run the report again for you until April 15th because it's locked out. So I appreciate the state doing that and letting us know, but that still doesn't, that is our concern with TISA next year, is that right now we can make changes. If we had student data that we needed to fix from August, we can go back and fix that in August. Next year with TISA, we have a 20-day lockout period. And then after that 20 days, we can't make any changes. So we will leave money on the table, I'm sure, just because of the way that the system is set up moving forward. So I want you to see just what the estimate was. The number went from 49,000 to 48,932. Largely, one of our middle schools, again, just made a schedule change in Skyward that impacted their kids and just happened to be the same day. What we're going to tell our schools, and this is not going to be great for us from an operational standpoint, is on the 15th of every month, don't make changes. And so that's going to be our standard operating procedure moving forward, is on the 15th of every month, don't make any changes to Skyward. So
And as soon as we get that down, they'll change the date.
they're probably right. So I anticipate this coming up again. It was a little frustrating that the person that calls us from the state is phenomenal. For all the things we give State Department a hard time on, he is absolutely phenomenal and called us just to let us know. It is frustrating that they're like, I know that it's an issue, but I can't rerun it for you.
Is it possible to get a report on the, I think it's going to be the economically disadvantaged line, where the free and reduced lunches that are not reported because that form is not filled? Do you think we could get some projections of how much that is impacting us?
Yes, my biggest guess or biggest estimate to do that would be to run the schools and run by students. Confidential information. You can't have the actual student IDs or anything.
Yeah, that's fine.
But to tell you a total count by school, that would be my best way to do that.
Can we, do you think we can add another layer to it and drill it by the demographics?
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yep,
I
we
would
can
like
do that.
information.
We can do that. And I do envision that economically disadvantaged number, we talked about our retreat, still continuing to increase as we match that. But that's something that right now we are matching and going back to the beginning of the year to add, that next year we won't have that ability.
Because if we can get that information, I know I've talked to you about it with you, in trying to help with that area where we can figure out how, if it's a lack of translators, work with that, and I'd be happy to help with that.
The only other, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to ask, I'm remembering, but Mr. Evans you're more than welcome to correct me, that we were going to start sending the free and reduced lunch paperwork home with the school paperwork, with the other school paperwork. So that way it's all at the same time. And maybe when they go through all the other paperwork, they'll fill out that free and reduced lunch.
You're talking about registration?
Yes, sir.
So registration is now completely online. So the way that parents like myself do this is they'll complete their normal forms, that there are certain forms that we can require. And Dr. Chastain's looking at me, she doesn't know I noticed, but she is, because she can also weigh in on this. But there are certain forms that we can't require, and that's the free and reduced lunch. We can provide the link to it. We've inquired about, is there a way to make it mandatory for everyone to fill out, but there's not a way to do it. So there's a screen that parents come to that says, if you think you qualify, please follow this link and complete the form. It's one per family, which makes it easier, and that's the way that we do it. So it's not something that we send home anymore. And I'll tell you, as a parent, I'm actually really thankful for that, because I used to get triplicates of each set for all 3 of my kids, and I would spend 3 hours filling out forms. It's much easier now to do it online. But to your point, the form is in there as a link that they're suggested to fill out, but we can't make it mandated. Does that make sense?
And the other, oh, go ahead.
I didn't know if we could say you can't go forward to the next one until, make it a succession of paperwork to be filled out. So in order to go forward to the next form, fill this.
There is something that you have to acknowledge, that you've seen the form before you can go to it, but it's an external form, because it's not our document, it's through the federal program, so they have to go to an external website to complete it. Am I right there, Dr. Chastain? And so we can't make them fill out the form before they get on the next, but they have to acknowledge that they've at least seen the form and declined it or whatever before they can move to the next screen.
One of the other items that was discussed at one of the Title I meetings was a video in Spanish stating that information is kept in-house. We don't send it anywhere else. We do that. It doesn't go to the state. It doesn't go to the federal. It stays here in-house, because I think there might be, some concern about that. And I think it would be helpful if we had a video out there in Spanish, and even if we could do Arabic.
I think that we would probably do English, Spanish, and Arabic.
Agree.
That'd be great.
Yep, agree.
That's a good idea.
But one of the issues is that the form is in English, it's not translated.
Again,
Here's what I-
There's
not our
Spanish
form,
versions
it's
too.
the-
Yeah.
Right, well, the form itself.
They are
Yeah.
in multiple
They're multiple.
languages. And there are currently videos that do exist on that site that explain exactly what you were just talking about, but I do think we can do a better job of communicating locally.
Yeah, we just need to get we need to get the word out that is there, yeah. I totally agree. Lack of communication.
I got a question on the economically disadvantaged. So is that based off the information that the parents fill out as well?
Correct, that's all where it comes from. And so we're so far down from last year because of parents filling out forms. And some financial situations may have changed, but
Right.
1,800 parent situations didn't change.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking that is, are we going to run into the same issue that we're running into with the forms for the lunch?
Yes, those are connected, yes. That's where they're coming from.
That's, yep.
Well,
And that is
just
a
to continue,
statewide trend, statewide.
Our schools do send these things out in multiple language through Dojo and things like that. I think there is, in some communities, a distrust that this information is going to be used somehow against them, and it's really hard for us to get that through sometimes. Would you agree, Dr. Chastain?
That there's a disconnect between the...
There's a distrust that it's going to be used for immigration.
No, I'm saying there's a disconnect between that information doesn't spill over.
Right.
Yeah, they just assumed that it would.
All right, the last couple things on financial summary that I wanted to hit on real quick, if I can find my notes again. I will hopefully, depending on what tomorrow is like, I would like for you guys to have the classified pay schedule proposal before you hopefully vote on it on April 20th. So I'll hopefully have that finished. That's my plan, is to be able to have the largest number of the positions, the ones that have the largest number of people in that for you guys to look at on Thursday. You won't have any action on it on Thursday, but at least for you to have it beforehand. We're still, of course, right in the middle of budget season, so we're working on all of our staffing numbers. The salary schedule is the big part of it. Brian and our departments are working on finalizing all of that. There is a building that we have looked at, Ms. Sharp and I have looked at it for a potential alternative school, and so just wanted to have some kind of just general discussion. We know that we have multiple needs. We've mentioned it to Health and Ed as well, just so that they were aware. We have put kind of a letter of intent on this property as a property to help with multiple needs, but largely alternative school. It is in the 100-year floodplain. And so in looking at the 100-year floodplain, though, we also realize of what it's costing versus what the benefit risk versus what our needs are. We're going to get a couple more numbers, but it's still something that I'm going to recommend we move forward with if all the information comes back. I realize that it's a risk that may have part of the building in a little bit of a floodplain, but we need alternative school seats, and it's the 100-year floodplain, not the 10-year. So, anything you want to add to that, Trey?
It is just a small section of the building, and the building does have a basement. The vast majority of the property is on the first and the second floor. None of that is in any danger of potential damage or flooding. It would be the basement area only. And there again, the price that they're requesting for the building versus going out here and building another one, it's, I guess what I'm beating around the bush at, it may be very well worth what little bit of risk that we take a chance on a small section of the building that could potentially flood once every 25 to 30 years. The only thing I said, and I told Dr. Sullivan, as soon as I say that, it'll flood 2 months.
100% it will.
But the rest of the building could still be utilized while that small section, if we were to have an issue. So at the price they're asking for the property and the improvements that would be needed to make it utilizable for us, we still could not go build that building, and I'm not even discussing purchasing property. I'm just saying we could not build the building for what we would have in it.
And it would serve a need that we could open in September instead of having to wait 12 months.
How many students would you think this could?
Depends on what we overall use it for, but I would hope that we would be able to seat, one alternative school is the number one thing, so we'll give us a third alternative school site. And then depending on how much we need with renovation will depend on what we were doing everywhere else. So.
Where is this property located and how much were they asking?
Can we disclose that, Mr. Reed, the address? Sounds great. Yeah. Yeah.
Do we know what the cost of the flood insurance would be?
We're self-insured.
Okay. Is there anything that we can do? I owned a property that was in the floodplain, and it didn't flood when the Nashville flood happened. So those maps sometimes can be a little bit further out.
I've worked with the city and got all the maps that are available to us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's in the plain, but I'm not sure it's as big a risk as it looks.
There's a lot of other buildings and properties of some well-known ones that are in that floodplain as well.
Well, it was just interesting because after the natural flood, a lot of stuff got redrawn. And so.
They're in the process of redoing them again right now.
Do we know when that will be back?
I've got the proposed information.
I'll have for you guys to vote on it hopefully on April 20th because I want us to be able to move if that's a recommendation that I do anticipate making right now. I want it to be able to be ready for the school year.
One last question on that. And if it is in any real danger, is there anything that we can do construction-wise to alleviate some of those concerns?
I believe so as well.
Great.
Yeah.
I just want to get all my yeses today.
Yeah. I was very disappointed last week when I heard it, and I felt much better earlier this week.
Oh, good.
So.
That's great news.
I think that the close proximity of it to the central office, I think it is something that we can actually use. Thank you, Ms. Sharp-Eye Sheila, for seeing that.
And the last thing I had on financial report is, of course, and I'll bring this up during director's update more, but something to go over financial is that we, of course, have budget is looking at our 3 high school addition requests on Thursday. Something I do want to keep on the forefront of everyone's mind is we have to have seats for students. And it is not something that I ever want to do, but depending on what happens there, we are going to get to the point at some point to where if things don't start moving, that we have to look at additional portables for the 24, 25, 25, 26. We're getting further and further out, and that's just the reality is we have to have plans for kids to go. So it's not the great news, but depending on what happens, it's something we do have to look at. I know, I'm sorry, just to this, it's the unfortunate part of growth. So that's all I have for that, and I'll come back in just a minute.
Oh, even if we do move forward, or they do move forward with the additions, are we still going to have to do the portables regardless? Because
It's
they're not going
those
to be
10,
done.
we should be good with the 10 that we've already purchased. But if we get further on, if something happens and it gets delayed even further, we're going to have to look at purchasing more. That was to get us through 1 year.
Number 13.
Insurance, anything with insurance?
No new information for the county general on our employees, but they are examining their possibilities of staying self-employed insurance or going to the state.
they're investigating that. Interesting.
Wait, there,
Yep.
okay, all righty.
Okay.
Number 14.
All right, director's update. One, thank everyone for their support and for our schools and our students. We had our safety day yesterday, which was very beneficial for our schools, our students. Ultimately, secondhand beneficial to our students, but really to our staff to be able to. We do great things in Rutherford County Schools. Thank you to our SROs, to our relationship with our sheriff's department, and just overall being able to reconvene and have all of our classified and certified staff together was a big deal. And that's something as we start building future schedules, and not even much schedules, it is something that from a financial standpoint that we actually tried to place in the budget last year is days that teachers are in for days for classified staff to be in, because there are multiple things where classified staff need to be doing that on those days. Right now, if it's an in-service day, then classified staff, EAs don't report. And those are days that we need to do things with our classified staff, such as safety. So overall, very thrilled with how yesterday went. So I'm going to leave the survey open through tomorrow. As of right now, we have 3,549 responses. And so that was an amazing response.
That's amazing.
And we had, so of our certified staff, we've got over 3,700. We had 2,400 certified staff fill it out. 646 classified, 116 nutrition, so it's over half of nutrition, 30 custodial positions. SROs had the choice between filling out as an SRO or certified staff, because I asked for it to be anonymous, and if they're the only SRO at their school and they fill it out, it's not anonymous.
No.
If they select SRO. But overall, it has been very good, and as far as rating, people pretty much, it was a bell curve between the fewest number of responses rating their school safe. You're always going to have outliers where the majority of people selected between 3, 4, and 5, which is what you would want. But there have been things that internally we even talked to the sheriff's department about just some quick weaknesses that we noticed that needed to be brought up. So of course, safety, we want to make sure that we are transparent, but that we also don't share confidential information, because we don't want that information out. That's kind of just our operation. We will be doing a couple things. So we'll be doing a question and answer. We've gotten multiple questions, rightfully so, from parents and teachers. We're going to be doing just a Q&A that we release each week of just some major topics that have come up. We've had a lot of conversations. James, you want to hit on any of the main ones you think this first one will get hit on?
We've had questions about SROs, and
Yep.
we plan to talk about those. One of the other ones, Patty, what was the other one we had today? Reunification, that's right. So parents want to know, for example, some of the questions we received is, where are the reunification locations for their specific school? We don't release that information ahead of time for reasons for security, but every school does designate 2 evacuation points. We have arrangements with local churches and things like that we can use. And so what we will do in the case of an emergency, and we have done this in the past, is we will announce to parents through all of our communications channels the procedures and the location for where they can pick up their children. And we've done that before. We had a gas leak once about 10 or 12 years ago at one school. I had to move all children from one school to another one in Smyrna, and it went very smoothly because we already had those agreements and plans in place. And so we're going to answer those questions for parents somewhat generically, but just so they understand that there is a plan there. Each week we'll send out something just from the questions we've received that week.
And we do drills, so we have state-required drills that we do. We go above and beyond. We do 2 major drills a year where we practice situations that unfortunately have occurred across the country and throughout, and that's something that has been going on this decade, or in this district for decades, that we do that. The SROs at their school are kind of pulled out of that, and then their administrative team handles that, and we run through all of those different protocols. We have our emergency management teams. Each school has their own crisis teams, from reunification to evacuation to lockdown. I mean, it's something that we practice. We just need to make sure that we revisited that, because when you're looking at April, it is a fine balance. Safety, of course, is our number one concern, but our job is to educate kids, and we're right in that major part of the school year. And so that was the hope for today, was to be able to reassure students, reassure our faculty members, and then make sure that we were focused on teaching and learning as we move forward. Last thing I wanted to bring up was, of course, with that Thursday night vote, I think we also need to be well aware that there could be multiple options that occurs. I could see multiple options that our first hope is that they fund everything exactly as we've asked. I could also see them only funding a couple, or I could see it happening to where it is just here's a set amount we'll give you for each school, and that is what you get. So still continue to have conversations hourly at this point about trying to push what our need is, but just wanted you to be aware that we will be ready for a plan A, plan B, plan C if things get pushed back or whatever needs to happen. That, of course, comes back to the board for approval on what the next steps are. But just wanted you to be kind of cautious and just be aware that there could be multiple things that get pushed on to the commission. We are on a timeline that this would go to full commission on April 13th. If there are any major changes, let's say that it is suggested that we'll fund a certain amount per school, anything like that would require us to have to go back out for design, out for bid processes, all of that, and slow us down again another 6 to 9 months. So just know if those type of things are what decided, which is totally within the county commission and budget, and they've been great to have conversations with. They're looking at it from a holistic perspective as well. If it is only funded a certain amount per school, then we would have to go back. Again, I hope that's not what occurs, but it's something we have to be realistic about.
And if you have, let me just say this, if you have parents that are reaching out to you and they want to be able to help, you can suggest that they call our county commissioners nicely, very nicely, and suggest that we need this funding for these 3 projects. We don't want to get into a situation where it's them against us. We've got to work together for the benefit of this county and the benefit of our students. But the rubber's about to meet the road, and our constituents need to be talking about what is needed in our schools and in our budget.
In the conversations I've had several extra commissioners, we talked about it at our retreat, and you guys have heard me say it. When we're building our budget off maintenance of effort, not requesting additional funds, with the expectation that they leave the 7 cents we left plus what they had previously, leaving the amount the same in our Fund 177. So that has helped in talking to county commissioners, because one of their biggest hesitations are, we don't want to approve this funding and then you come ask us for extra cents on your regular budget, and we're asking just for the bare minimum. We'll make the rest work internally. Last thing that I did want to just hit on is the board back in January or February looked at a contract for the veterans property. So right now that is sitting, but I'm not anticipating that potentially moving forward. So in order for it to be a school site for us, we would need to have a certain amount of property close for us to build the building we need. Right now, we're in some disagreements, and we've made our final request of this is what we have to have for us to be able to move forward. And so it's kind of sitting with them to see if it's anything else we want to entertain. So just want to give you an update on where that's at. Right now, I'm not optimistic about that.
When is the city school going to be built?
They're waiting on us too. I think we're all kind of figuring out who is, because
They could help a sister out.
well, they could, but realistically, when we build a school, we're helping, by state law, we're helping them too, so. Yep, and I mentioned our executive session, didn't I? I may not have. It's Wednesday, April 12th, our executive session that is not open to the public. That's to discuss safety, and it's not that we're discussing anything that we're trying to hide. It is that we are talking about safety, funding, all those different types of things, so that our local funding body and local elected officials know kind of what our operating procedures are for safety.
And that is open to any elected official in the county, including like the Smyrna mayor, Laverne mayor, if they wish to attend, anyone who is an elected official. So if you guys want to reach out to other people, they are, the general public is not allowed to come, but any of the elected officials are. Ms. Rosales, would you like to give an update, or you want to do Thursday?
No, I can do that right now. So the governor gave a press conference yesterday in light of the events that happened last Friday, and talked about enhancements on the safety legislation and the school safety legislation that is currently circulating in the General Assembly. So ironically, HB 322 and SB 274, that is a bill that is carried by the chairman of education, actually brought it before the Education Committee last Wednesday. And I believe what's going to happen, well, I'm not going to say that because I'm not really 100% sure. But anyways, there is a bill, and with that bill, they're going to fatten it a little bit more. So what's going to include that aside of what is already included. So last Wednesday, they proposed this legislation, SB 322, and really it was to help with the exterior doors to make sure they're locked properly, and that they're going to be running an audit per school. If your school is found to not have your doors locked, you will get dinged. They did talk about penalizing the schools, but according to them, it was going to be a nominal fee. Don't quote me with the nominal fee because I don't know. They were not really sure about that. But it was just to get everyone, trying to get them to lock the doors and get in the habit of locking the doors. And also to help upgrade the schools that don't have the current lock system where you can lock the doors correctly, because some of these schools are old buildings, and so they still have the hardware from when the schools were probably not necessarily built, but they just have old hardware that needs to be updated. And so that was going to take care of this. So that was really what that bill talked about. But now that the governor spoke on Monday, this other items were included, which was to require private security guards to, or the SROs to attend active shooter training prior to being posted at a Tennessee school. So that is a mandatory training that they will have to go through. It's also going to provide funding for an SRO, to have every school to have at least one armed full-time SRO. This piece is going to be interesting because there was already a bill out there called SB 1400 that was amended, that has an amendment 5011 that was sent last Wednesday by our very own state Senator Reeves, that addressed this piece. There was some hesitation in the Education Committee in this because it had a large size amount of money to fund, and it did get out of Education Committee, but there was uncertainty if it was not going to pass in the Finance Committee. The good news is that now that the governor spoke and he's backing this piece, he is adding $140 million. He's asking $140 million to fund a grant fund to place so that every school can have an armed SRO. So I think that's a good thing. The question is going to be what's going to happen to the bill SB 1400 now that the governor is adding this to SB 322. And then it's also he's also requiring every school to and private school to develop annual safety plans. And they have to be with all these safety plans must include everything that are required by the state. And then also, I believe he's also asking for the LEAs or the districts to create a threat assessment team. There were no details given about that, but that's going to be part of the enhancement school security initiative that he spoke last Monday. So in regards to the funding, I already talked about the $140 million that's going to be added for to hire SROs. It's going to fund, he's asking for $30 million to expand statewide Homeland Security network. That's going to have 122 agents across the whole state. And then $20 million for public school security upgrades. I have been in communication with our General Assembly as to what that really means, if that $20 million can go towards anything that we will need for security equipment. I'm going to get a follow-up on that because there's no further information or guidance on that. So I think that will help our district, that piece, a lot besides the SROs. And then also $7 million for private school security upgrades and $8 million for additional school-based behavioral health liaisons across the state. He really talked a lot, not a lot, but really mentioned mental health. And this funding is to address that in the hopes that they will expand behavioral health liaisons across the state. So that is my update on that piece. I'm going to follow those two bills that I just mentioned today because they're going to be in committee tomorrow. So I will be at the Capitol following those two bills and other bills as well. But that's the recap that I have right now.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but it seems like last year we spent about $7 million on rekeying.
On rekeying?
Rekeying.
No,
New
that would
keys.
have been our whole budget. We did spend about $1.5 million.
For some reason I had 7 million.
But
That's what we request.
Oh, that's what we
Yeah,
requested.
but-
yes, we do have about 7 million in requests for rekeying
Totally. And it's part of our 177 fund that is,
capital projects.
I knew there was a 7 million in
you're
there
right, yeah.
somewhere. Mr. Lee, while I've got you at the mic, could you give me an update, please, for the Smyrna and Laverne light poles? You have one, or do you want to talk about it later?
It doesn't matter, I can do it tonight or next weekend, or next Thursday. I met with one company today, and I will meet with the other lighting company tomorrow. It does not make logical sense to just replace one pole and the lights. The logical thing, because they're all the same age, is to replace all four. So I will be bringing forward a budgeted price for replacement of 4 poles and 4 lights. I am requesting that they are concrete poles, which is what we've been doing at our new schools. It will be LED lighting, and the lighting will have to meet TSSAA specs.
So if we would have gone with the what is it, CMTA? I don't remember the acronyms. Would that take care of some of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And it's still very much on our radar.
Okay. And then the Roy Waldron Annex, the guardrails.
That is, we're still trying to get pricing from a TDOT contractor. They're the only ones that can do that, so we're still trying to get that.
Thank you so much. Anything else, Dr. Sullivan?
I'm good.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to commend central office staff as well as our teachers and administrators. As a parent in Rutherford County, the communication that was received about how you guys were going to handle Monday and today on Tuesday with the announcements that were going out was very refreshing and very much appreciated, that it was so clear and that there was so much communication. So thank you guys very much for all of the hard work that you took on that.
I was glad James Evans got to talk to all of his people again.
They were glad too.
And thank you for those who were on spring break. Dr. Sullivan, who, because of the events last week, there were several discussions and breaks into the spring break. So thank you so much for that. And I'm just going to say we had one letter that was not approving of the actions that we're taking. And if there's one thing that unites this board, we're like a family. We squabble and we disagree, but we all do agree on the security of our teachers and our students in our district. So we're not going to apologize for taking extra steps and extra time.
And I appreciate y'all's support on that. That was great. Thank you.
100%. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Thank you so much.